Matthew 25:35 says, "I was a stranger and you welcomed me." Toronto's Matthew House is seeking to do just that as they open their doors to refugees from all over the world, providing them shelter and a place of hope at the end of the refugee highway. Today, we are joined by Samia Tecle, coordinator for Toronto's Matthew House. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We are glad that you are here. So, the Matthew House now has 3 homes in Toronto. It has been up and running for 17 years. Tell me how it got started.
Definitely. So it's a wonderful story, actually, a very touching story. It started over 25 years ago when our founder, Ann Wolger, had a burden for refugees. She was working with refugees in Toronto, working to assist them and help them resettle, and found that there was no government program or no program in place to help refugee claimants. So there are different ways that refugees actually arrive in Canada. There are 3 different ways. They're government sponsored, privately sponsored, and there are refugee claimants who come to Canada and have no one to receive them. So Matthew House, she established Matthew House 17 years ago, like you were saying, to serve this specific group of people.
So talk to me, there's a process that refugees go through when they arrive to Canada. Tell me a little bit about that process and what it looks like.
So definitely. So the 2 that I was talking about that arrive and have programs in place to assist them, they actually arrive with status, whereas refugee claimants, the group of people that Matthew House receives, they literally are dropped off at the airport with no one to receive them. Sometimes they come and just knock on our doorstep. Sometimes taxi drivers just leave them on the street. And then when they arrive, there's a host of services that we provide for them. Anything from just even providing safe shelter for them, a roof over their heads, different settlement services, signing up for ESL classes, even opening a bank account, clothing. A lot of the refugee claimants arrive with no clothing.
Because really, they leave everything at home. They have nothing.
Literally.
I mean, I can't imagine walking in just what I have on right now up to your door and, asking to be welcomed.
Definitely. It definitely is heartbreaking, but also very inspiring to see the different paths that people take to arrive, and literally for us to see people back on their feet and restoring of dignity and respect and being treated with hope and respect and love. It really does put a smile on our face as well.
Well, obviously there are millions of refugees, and Matthew House cannot accommodate all of them. How do you go about determining who you can accommodate and who you are not able to accommodate?
So the way that refugees arrive at Matthew House, there is, like you're saying, a capacity, definitely.
Right.
And we have found so many times over, even just right now, we are receiving more than above capacity. We make rooms out of places that you wouldn't think. We have people staying on our couches sometimes. And that's why I think it's so important that places like Matthew House continue to exist, to continue to receive people that don't have people to receive them, to welcome them upon arrival here in Canada.
So once they do arrive at Matthew House, what does that process look like from the time that they arrive to the time that they leave?
So on average, all of our residents stay with us for 3 months until they complete their process. So there's been some changes in the immigration system, making it a lot more difficult, and the time deadlines and constraints making it shorter. So people usually stay with us for about 3 to 4 months. When they arrive, there are services that we set them up with almost automatically. Like I was saying, like different ESL programming, navigating the difficult refugee determination system in Canada that can be very daunting and intimidating for people.
It's overwhelming.
Definitely overwhelming, and it culminates with them having to present their story before a judge, essentially. They're called IRB members, which can be very difficult and daunting.
And talk about the persecutions that they've suffered?
Exactly. That's exactly what they have to do, yeah.
Wow, that's difficult. So tell me a little bit about how a refugee can obtain status.
So essentially they have to go through this process. It starts when they arrive here. They're found a lawyer. They have to connect with a lawyer usually. Some people don't have lawyers, but for the most part, Matthew House residents do find themselves a lawyer. They have to actually go to the immigration office and say, I'm here to make a claim, so to make their status known. And then they essentially, at the end of 30 or to 45 days, they present their case before this IRB member, this judge, like I was saying. And then that judge essentially makes the decision whether they're able to stay in Canada or not.
Do you, being a part of Matthew House, do you feel that there's a possible way to make that transition easier?
Definitely, and I think that's exactly why Matthew House exists. I think people, when they're leaving places of persecution, they're being detached from everything that they know, their families, they don't have their loved ones. They're arriving in this culture, in this climate that it's new to them. It can be very lonely, and they can feel, like you were saying, some of them arrive with no clothing on their back. So to have to think about this very intimidating navigating this intimidating refugee system can also be very difficult as well. So even just having a friend to speak with, having a loving home, a caring community that's there to, to just say, we're with you along this, I think it helps a great deal.
Definitely, and I'm sure that you have seen a lot of success stories. Can you share one with us?
Definitely. I consider myself really blessed to be found at Matthew House. So many times I know people look at us and kind of praise and thank us. So many residents come back and say, oh, what Matthew House and the staff and the volunteers, what they've done. But I consider myself really blessed to be able to witness the hand of God working in so many of our residents and the lives of our residents. If I can, success looks very different, I can say. For every resident that comes to our home that we receive, success can look really different for everybody. I love, when the time people come, sometimes when they're leaving, just to see the transition of, some people come and are cold, have no clothing, just feel really a loss of dignity and everything. By the time they leave, sometimes even just to see people leave with the confidence that they do, it is really inspiring as well.
To be able to help them get back on their feet.
Definitely.
And this hits very close to home with you because your parents were actually refugees, right?
Definitely. So my parents arrived in Canada during the winter as well, so very different from the climate that they were used to. My parents are from Eritrea, arrived over 30 years ago in Canada under very similar conditions to the people that I help. So being at Matthew House, a lot of it does really come full circle for me as well.
Yeah. What does the future look like for Matthew House?
The future of Matthew House, I think by the grace of God, we will continue to keep our doors open, continue to receive people with the love and dignity that we do. And that's, yeah.
And so obviously there's the Syrian refugee crisis that is going on right now, and the Canadian government has said that they're going to open their doors to 10,000 Syrian refugees. How is the Matthew House prepared to help?
Definitely. And we're really excited that the government has mentioned that they're going to accept that many people over the next 2 years. Matthew House will continue to partner with refugee agencies that exist across the country. We're also part of a close-knit, connected group of churches that we will continue to assist and help with resettlement of those people as well.
Great. Well, we appreciate you, Samia, and all that you do. And whether you are a refugee out there, a refugee, or you just want to pray for a refugee, we have people at our prayer lines 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, who would love to pray with you. So please pick up the phone right now and give us a call. Thank you so much for joining us. We are glad to have you with us.